What's up, Aaron? Finally getting back to you. Thanks for your last video. It was good. I have a lot that I want to talk to you about and a lot that I would like to hear from you about. The first is you finished Magicians as you posted on Goodread, and I saw that you gave it 1 star. I read most of your comments as you were going along through the reading, and so I pretty much feel like I understand why you gave it 1 star. I wish that I had reread it with you because I read it years ago, and I think I remember it more fondly than what it actually was, if that makes sense. I remember, as I shared in my thoughts with you on Goodreads, that the character and kind of the whole feel of the novel was very emo. And while I appreciate the author was giving a toss-up to Narnia by creating Fillory and having similar ways of travel between the two, you're right, the world did lack imagination and creativity, and there was just not really anything that super gripped me about it. So I'm glad that you read Magicians. I'm sorry that I didn't remember all the things that I didn't like about it, because maybe if I had remembered better what I didn't like, I wouldn't have been so excited about remembering the things that I did like, and maybe I would have dissuaded you from reading it, because I obviously never finished the series, which then I suddenly had the aha moment where I was like, oh, obviously I didn't think the series was worth finishing. So, my bad for not telling you that sooner. Okay, so, Thinks. I finally finished it. Sorry that it took me so long. School started back up, and that was a big part of why it took me so long. And the other reason was that I got sidetracked with restarting the Wheel of Time series. Again, as we mentioned on Goodreads, we were both kind of hankering for some good fantasy. I had read these like 8 years ago, right about the time that I moved to Maryland, and I had read the first 3 and the prequel. I have now reread the first 2 and am halfway through the 3rd one, and I forgot how much I loved these. These are so much fun. I mean, they're not going to be, life-shaking, earth-shattering, philosophical things. They're not hidden treatises on politics or ethics or things like that. They're just, Robert Jordan, he even said when he was live in interviews, he just wanted to write a good story that he would love to read. And so they're just fun fantasy. I really like them. So I'm halfway through this, the 3rd in the series. But then I realized, oh crap, I've got to finish Thinks. So I paused on these. I would encourage you to read these, but it's an enormous series of 14 books. Almost everybody that I have ever talked to that likes fantasy on any level will tell you that these are worth reading all the way through to the end. So that's what I'm going to do this time. But obviously I'm going to take some side trips every once in a while, because at this point I've read about 1,100 pages of Robert Jordan. So I think it's okay to take a break. But now I finished Thinks, so I'm probably going to jump back and finish this. Unless you're on Dune, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, Thinks. I know that you're really thinking, what did you ever think about Thinks? So, here's what I thought about Thinks. Question. Why is this probably your favorite book of all time now? And I'm not saying that asking that in a subliminal, you're an idiot, this shouldn't be your favorite book, what? Kind of way. I'm asking it in I'm really genuinely curious why this would be rated upon one of the best books that you've ever read before. Because I read it all the way through. There are a lot of things that I really like about it, but it is quite honestly probably a book I will never read again. Here are my thoughts on it. A, I really liked the way that the author, David Lodge, set the 2 main characters, Messenger and Helen, up not only as 2 people who meet, but they each represent the side of the argument that is being presented in the book on whether or not there is consciousness, the consciousness problem, as they talk about it in here. Obviously, Messenger represents science and the idea that there is no consciousness, there is no self, no soul, no human identity. We're just brain, neurons, and synapses firing and responding, and basically computers that are learning and adapting and readjusting as we go. And when we die, it's all over. Helen, representing the literary world and the humanists and the idea that there is a soul and a consciousness and a self that is more than a brain but is the mind, she represents that character. And the two not only are in dialogue and argument about those ideas, but I thought it was very clever that their approaches to life also personified those different points of view. However, I do think at the end, in my opinion, spoiler alert, I think their reaction to the climax of everything, I think both the author and Helen in the book would argue that Helen is right. That we are more than just a collection of thoughts and memories and electronic chemical reactions, but we actually are something more than biological science and cognitive science. So anyway, I thought that was very clever. However, I don't think it's unique or rare for characters to represent or personify their arguments. That's not new. That's a pretty standard literary device. But this author does it very well. Well written. The way he writes, even the scientific, heavy discussion elements of the book, they never get so heavy that you're lost or bored. He's a very engaging writer. He's good with conversation. I thought he did a great job of setting up a lot of unique characters and making them individualistic and interesting in a short amount of time. You know, it's not like a fantasy world where you have 3,000 pages of multiple volumes to develop characters. This is just a standalone novel, and you fall in love with the characters quickly. Again, he does that very well. So I enjoyed the story. I liked... that's probably where I'm going to stop with the likes. Sorry. So here's what I didn't like about it. A, I didn't like it that it's basically a book about everybody in the world having affairs and being adulterous, and that infidelity is normal, and even the one person that takes a moral higher ground on the whole issue, in the end, comes to justify participating in adultery themselves simply for the fact that everybody else around them is doing it. And that even though she discovers at post-death that her husband was unfaithful, you know, and then her friend who is trying to get her to be unfaithful with him, she finds out that her wife is being unfaithful, and she knows that he's been unfaithful, and, oh, my husband, it turns out, even though he's dead, he was unfaithful the whole time that we were married. So, well, gosh darn it, I tried to take the higher road, but since everybody else is screwing around, why can't I? And so, I don't know. It just, that kind of disappointed me. In all of their dialogue about consciousness and whatnot, I felt like the whole book danced around this really significant, emotionally charged topic that hits us at a very deep emotional level, that of infidelity and being faithful and cheating on each other and the ramifications of all of that. He could have explored that so much more, and maybe he didn't on purpose, and maybe in that way he kind of argued for Messenger's side that maybe we are just a bunch of reactions to stimuli. But nonetheless, it really disappointed me that that was kind of the whole thrust of the book. It also disappointed me that he spends about 280 pages building up around this sexual tension between the two as they make their arguments with each other. And then in the last 50 pages, not only do they start to have the affair, but the whole entire story wraps up and comes to a resolve. And it basically ends because, holy cow, cliche, every novel, book, TV show, movie ever made, one of the two has a near-death experience that makes them question what they're doing and their actions, and they find true value in their spouse who's been with them through it all, even this time, and blah, blah, blah. And So I'm not going to have the affair anymore, and it conveniently ends now that the book is over. And that kind of disappointed me too. Um, I don't know. A good book, interesting read. I like the dialogue and the discussions going on in it. Well written. I'm glad you made me read it. It was a nice break from the things that I normally read. I did like the way that it followed their thoughts and let you into their personal journals and thought lives unfiltered, because I did resonate with a lot of the thoughts and patterns that you saw there. But on the whole, I don't feel like a better person for having read this book. It didn't make me feel incredibly entertained. Hang on just a second. Stop. So anyway, good book. I liked it. Please don't be afraid to recommend more things like this to me, because I love you and I value your opinion, and I'm glad that I read this book, but it's nowhere near my top anything for those reasons. So, having said that, I'm out of time. This is way past time, but I thought you might, because this book was so important to you, I wanted to really give you my thoughts on it. I wish I could have had an Angela Baldwin or somebody magically appear to surprise you, but I'm in Texas and I don't have anybody to do that. So, I'm excited to read Dune with you. It's such a science fiction classic that I went ahead and picked up the Barnes & Noble Pretty Edition, because I'm a Barnes & Noble member, and there's a ribbon marker. Who doesn't want a ribbon marker? And it smells good. So I'm excited to read this with you. Let me know when we're going to dive into that, and we will. I recommended the Wheel of Time series to you. Check it out. Something else I wanted to recommend, just if you ever wanted to delve back into, I'm not sure where you're attending church or where you're worshiping, but this book, Sit and Gathered, a worship manual for the missional church, is a book that I've been required to read for class. It is one of the best books on Christian worship that I've ever read, as far as examining it and why do we do what we do and what's the theology behind it, but what also are the practices of making sure that we honor tradition and at the same time keep worship scriptural, but sensitive to what's going on in our world and context and time. It's just really good. Out of all the books that I've read since being at seminary, this has probably been the most enjoyable on both a thought-provoking and practical level. And finally, I'm getting ready to read this in my world religions class, Christianity Through Non-Christian Eyes. It literally goes through all of the major world religions, Judaism, Islam, Hindu, Buddhism, etc., and it looks at Christianity from the perspective of scholars, theologians in those religions, and it's their take and perception on Christianity from the outside. So I'm getting ready to start reading this next week. I'm really excited about it. I don't know, it sounded like something maybe that would pique your interest. And also, if you're looking for a great game just to play around the house that doesn't take a lot of brain power but is a lot of fun, my wife and I just recently were introduced by a friend to Zombie Dice and Chupacabra. They're just dice games. There's some strategy involved, but they're fun in that things have to state a chance. So, Chupacabra! Check them out, bro. They're cheap and they're fun, and you can drink coffee or whiskey while you're playing them, and not risk losing because you're not paying attention, but you can still have fun. And there's just something about shaking some dice without fear of losing your paycheck. So anyway, I love you. I know this was super long, but thank you for thanks. It made me think. I'm really excited about Brothers Karamazov when you get it to me, and I'm really excited about Dune. And I will try to post more frequently. I love you. Okay, bye.